Hi, and we're back. This is Shelley Letwin from GV Design Canada, and this is part 3 of a series of matrix setting videos. I'm going to just stress these are guidelines that I've followed over a number of years. I am a CAD operator full-time, and these are guidelines that I've been using. Again, if your setter's not happy with these numbers that I'm giving you, please listen to them. So not only are these guidelines helpful for people that are just starting out designing jewelry, but some other people that have been using Matrix for a while might be picking up some tips and tricks from me as well. So you can see here, part 3, we are going to start talking about head builder. So I've got my 1 carat, and this is basically what the program builds you right away. So if I just go ahead and delete it, and again, I'm going to select the stone, tap F6, and come down to head builder. Here we go. Now, when we first started developing Matrix, and yes, I was part of the Gemvision team back in 1999 is when we worked on it for a solid year before we could sell it. So when we first developed Matrix, the programmers always had the prongs or claws come out at 0.6 millimeter. Didn't matter what size of gemstones we had, it always came out at 0.6. And then Gemvision started having roundtable discussions where customers came for a weekend. We showed you what we were working on, and we listened to you and got feedback on what you wanted. And one of the feedbacks is there's a lot of us that have never worked on the bench that are using Matrix, and we're not quite sure what the thicknesses need to be. So can we increase it? So if it's a larger stone, make them larger. So again, those roundtable discussions were really great back in the day. So you'll notice here with this 1 carat stone, we've got 1.1 millimeters thickness, and that's a good thickness. And your stone will definitely be secure with that. If you want to make it thinner, by all means you can, but again, just be mindful. You want to make sure that the stone is going to be secure and not fall out. And if you do have clients that are insisting on it being finer, who's going to pay for that stone when it falls out? And the other thing too with CAD is even my retail customers, they see this looks like the Empire State Building. And if you take out a ruler right now and look at 1 millimeter, it isn't that thick, but it looks heavy here. So again, you're going to have to stress to your clients, this is CAD. It looks larger than it actually is. I mean, there is a option. Let me just press enter. There is an option view. Sorry about that. So there is an option in view, and it is the zoom 1:1. So you can click on it. It's very easy to set this up. You actually have to go to zoom. Okay, let me just show you that. Why not while we're here? Okay, if you click on this zoom 1:1 calibrate, you go right now to your drawer and you measure this bar on your laptop or your monitor. You type it in here and hit OK. So let me just bring that back. Control Z will bring it back. So if you need to, if you're working with a client right in front of you, you could do the zoom 1:1 and go, this is how big it really is. So if you're in front of someone, they're going to go, oh, yeah, it's not as big as I thought it was going to be. So unfortunately, that's the drawback. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox here. So I'm selecting the head, I'm tapping F6, I'm going back to head builder so that I can get these handles to be interactive. Okay, so I'm going to explain head builder, and if you know it, then you can just zoom past this if you want. But right now we are on level 1. You can see here level 1, and there's all these handles. There's also mode, which is the number of prongs that are available with this shape of stone. So if you've got a heart shape or a marquee shape, you're not going to get as many settings. The round seems to have the most amount here. So if you look at level 1, Danielle, our lady that did all our graphics for our buttons in Matrix, you'll notice that she's got the prongs yellow and the rails yellow, which means that whatever I touch over here, so if I grab this prong size and I increase it, notice the rails are getting increased at the same time. So everybody's working together, okay? So this is level 1. Now, when I'm in level 1, most of the time, depending on my client, some clients want things a little heavier, some want a little finer, but I'm not really going too much smaller than what's coming up as the default with Matrix. But I will go into the through finger viewport, and this is where I can adjust how tall this setting is and what kind of angle. Okay, so that's pretty much all I'm doing in level 1 is adjusting the prong size, adjusting the head drop, and the angle. There's a couple other features in here. You can also use the top angle. You can pull this in. So if you want your setting to curve a little bit, that's a nice feature, and then you can pull this in. Okay, so that's with your top angle. And if you want to, now some people want me to make these claws very tall or prongs very tall, and it's the manufacturers. They want to make sure that I'm giving the setter enough metal to push over, because your customers can say, okay, the stone measures 6 millimeters round and whatever depth it is, but depending on the stone, the setter might need that extra metal, and after it's been cast and finished and it goes to the setter, and then the setter is very cranky that you haven't given them enough length. So again, you have the option. I only have one client that wants me to make it super tall. Everyone else seems to be okay, but again, every once in a while you'll get a colored stone, and if you know you're dealing with a colored stone, maybe just increase that just a smidge. There's also a prong nudge, which the nudge is 0.1. Now that is the thickness of one single sheet of paper. So if you zoom in here and you're like, oh, that's overlapping too much, remember, this is one sheet of paper. I don't ever mess with this. However, I do have clients that want me to go to 0.3. Okay? But for the most part, I don't want the setting too small, and I just leave the prong nudge the default. Okay, that's level 1. Level 2, you'll notice by the picture here that the prongs are separated by the rails. So if you click on the letter P up at the top, now you have these handles. So in level 1, if you took the handle and increased it, it would maintain the aspect ratio, meaning that if I scaled it out in this direction, that in X, it would scale out in the exact same measurement. Okay, so with level 2, if you needed to make oval prongs versus round prongs, you have that ability. The other thing in level 2 is that you can adjust the prong angle. Sometimes I've done this, especially if it's a halo. If I'm making a halo beside this and this prong is overlapping the stone on the halo, so I might want to just angle it so that this is in between those two stones. There's also the Taco Bell, so we can go into the library here and choose a different shape of the top of our prongs. Again, the programmers kind of got out of control. You know, they didn't factor in polishing. So anyways, unless you're making like a simple solitaire and you want to make it just a little bit different, you can mess around with these different shapes. So here's the heart shape. Let's just use the heart shape here. The other option, which was also in level 1, is this half bezel icon. So if you click on it, your prongs end up being flat. Let's go back to the circle here. So you can see here we've got a nice dome when we're using a different shape, but when we do the half bezel, it flattens it out. And then you've got this prong, V-prong edge angle so that you can adjust the width on this. So if I went back to level 1, and let me just reset this, you can see now all the prongs work together. So again, yesterday we were talking about using the bezel cutter to make a half bezel. You can definitely switch to 2 prongs, click on the crescent or the half bezel, and there you go. There's a half bezel, easy peasy for you. So let's go back to our 4 prongs and level 2. Okay, so again, P for prong, R for rail. So we'll just leave these at round. Okay, so if I click on R for rail, you can leave these round wire rails if you like, or if we click on the library, I usually choose this rail 4 as my upper gallery rail and hit select. And then I usually increase this to at least 1 millimeter. Okay, now there is the rail X offset at 0.3, and if we go to the looking down viewport and zoom in, you can see a little bit of that rail just past the gemstone. So be careful with this rail X offset. You still need a connection with the prong and the rail. So what is my, I'm at 0.2. If I bring it into 0, which I normally don't do, see, it's just barely touching. So as long as it's not peeking through from the top view, I leave it because I want a good connection there. And then here, depending on the size of the stone, I might even pull this out to 1 millimeter. So 1 millimeter tall, 1 millimeter high. But again, this is for 1 carat. On the smaller stones, I might go 0.7 and 0.7 on the inside. Now, there is a rail drop, so this will work independent from the top rail and the bottom rail. So this works independently. And again, you can raise and lower this. And again, if you have a deep bellied stone, you might want to lower it down. And you'll notice that it's the same for the bottom rail as well. That's level 2. Level 3 is where you've got a lot more control. And if you look at the picture of level 3 here, the 2 rails are separated, and the prong is not necessarily separated from each other. But what is happening in level 3 is that your top of your prong can be different than the bottom of your prong. So when I was telling you in level 2 where I might move the prongs over so that they're not overlapping the stone with the halo, a lot of times I'll come down here to the bottom prong and actually grab the nudge and pull it in. Okay, and then see the angle of this is different, and it may or may not touch that other gemstone. When we get to Halo Builder, I'll show you my little trick on that. Okay, so now when I click on the library or the Taco Bell, I'm sorry, the guy that came up with this whole theory loves Taco Bell, and of course he had to use the bell shape, so that's the story behind that. Lots of little stories working at Gemvision, so there you go. I'm calling it the Taco Bell. He hates that I call it the Taco Bell. It sticks, and there you go. Oops, and it did it change? Oh, sorry. I clicked on the bottom, or the bottom of the prong. So now our prongs are square at the bottom, which is kind of an interesting look, so I'm going to leave that. Sorry, it's the rail that I have to click on. I'm going to change that to rail 3 and hit select. Okay, so now before we had this angle here that made room for the pavilion of the stone, and now we can give the setting a little bit more strength by having this as a rectangle versus this rectangle with this angle. And again, it's independent, so if I want to make this heavier. Now, I've talked to a few jewelers and asked them, is it better to have this gallery thicker than the bottom gallery, or is it better to have the bottom gallery thicker than the top like I have? And when I worked for a manufacturer, we always built our heads this way. If you want to tell me, if you want to reach out to me and tell me why it would be better to have this heavier and this finer, I'm happy to listen to your opinions on this. But as far as I know, I've always left this heavier because, again, if it's on a ring and you're going to grind it down a little bit when you're cleaning up the inside, then perhaps have this a little heavier. So there you go. That's the theory, and I'm sticking with it. Okay. You also have the rail offset in here. There is a rail drop. So if you are making a setting where these bottoms of the prongs have to be embedded in, and you're going to Boolean out a little area where these prongs are going to drop down into a solid piece of gold, you might want to raise this up. Otherwise, we can just keep it at the same height as the bottom of our prongs. Okay, so that's the rails, and again, the prongs, you have a prong angle, and now what happens is that these are separated. So if you're doing a design where you need that the prong angles on the top are different than the prong angles on the bottom, you have that ability. It never had to do that, but you never know what kind of gemstone, like you could be getting a custom cut from something that you bought at the Tucson Gem Show, and that might come in handy at that point. So that's level 3. Level 4 is full independent control, if you read over here. So that means that every element of this head is separate from each other. I don't really hang out in this too much. Most of the time people want their heads symmetrical. But here's a couple of things that I do in level 4. Number 1, if you want a true double claw, okay, double prong, if I click on the option of 8 prongs instead of 4, and then hop back. So the moment that you change your number of prongs, it always defaults back to level 1. Let's click on level 4. I can just use the prong angle and scoot these over. Now I'm just eyeballing. I guess I could remember what angles these are at. And most of the time I'll just get 2 looking good together, ungroup them, and then mirror and mirror instead of spending the time individually moving these over, just so that it is symmetrical. But here's a way of making a true double prong by being in level 4. Okay, the other option that I've done with level 4 is switching to the north, south, east, west on a prong mode, going to level 4, clicking on the prong at the top and just scooting it out. Okay, so you could punch a hole in here. Let's go to the bottom here and scoot this one out. So, and then take the nudge. Okay, so this is very exaggerated, but I could punch a hole through here, put a chain through, and we've got a little pendant. Those are the only 2 things that I do in level 4. Most of the time, so let's go back to level 1, and no, usually, okay, can I switch to another? There we go. Everybody's the same now. Okay. So we're in level 1. Just trying to, there is no reset button unfortunately here. So can I go back to the 4 and let's just get this in. No, I got to go to level 2, sorry, to, there you go, and then go back to level 1 and there we go. Okay, those are the 4 different levels. The other thing too is Shear Rails. Let's go into the through finger viewport and let's turn the shade mode off. Okay, so there's an option in Rhino called Shear, and basically I call it the Leaning Tower of Pisa. This is shearing in Rhino's terms, is that it's leaning. Okay, so if you turn this off, then you can get these rails straight up and down, but for the most part, I'm always leaving the shear rails on. Now, this is technically, let's go back to display and preview shade. Technically, this is a head that you're not going to be able to order from any findings company. Okay, maybe there is one out there that's like this, but chances are no. But if you really like this head and you want it to be able to have it not only for the 1 carat, but you want the 1/2 carat and the 3/4 carat, you can actually save this under styles. So if I click on the little star here, click on add to library, you can name it. I'm just going to have to call it test. Let's just call it test 3. And then I'll click on save, and then it's down here in our library. Now, there's other settings or heads that come with Matrix. So if you don't want to use the standard one, you could just come over here and select it. There you go. Now I can even spin it around here. So instead of you spending the whole time going into the different levels and achieving this, you might want to use some of these settings that are already in the library, or we can go back to the one that we chose and we'll just hit apply. Okay, so I'm just going to go delete this. Let's go back and grab another gemstone. So that gemstone was a 1 carat. Pretty heavy at the base, so what if we went to something larger like a 1.5? There we go. Okay, so we tap F6, go to Head Builder, and again, all we have to do is go into Style Sheets, and I can pull the elevator down here, click on our setting, and hit apply. So if you design something and you really like it, but want the ability to use it on different size gemstones, that's how you can save it, and then you don't have to keep recreating the same setting. So that's Head Builder. All I can say is if you stick with the defaults, but again, I am making these rails heavier and changing the shape. I always like this look versus the round wire, but again, I do have customers that like that round wire effect because it looks finer than this flat style. Okay. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about, and I mentioned it in another video, is match attributes. So let me just pause the video for a second and I'll be back momentarily. Okay, we're back. So with match attributes, we saw in another video that, again, these stones have history, and I was able to bring back a bezel, a plain bezel, when we were doing bezel cutter. So if I select these 2 stones, tap F6, and go to match attributes, up at the top it says select objects to take the style sheet from. So the style sheet is actually the head and the object is the stone. So if I click on the stone, it's going to say, what do you want to match? Well, the only choice we have is a head. Let's hit create. And so there it comes out in the different sizes, and again, these guys are scaled down based on the size of the gemstone. Same thing with Bezel. Oops. So I'm going to select the other two stones. Same thing with Bezel Builder. Match attributes, select the stone, bezel, and create. Okay. The cool thing about Bezel matching attributes is if I select this stone and go to MSR, which stands for Move, Scale, Rotate, we'll click on that. And if I scale the stone down and press Enter, notice that the bezel will get updated as well. So I can make it smaller and I can make it larger. But however, with Head Builder, if I go to MSR and scale it down, it doesn't update itself. So that's the cool thing about Bezel Builder, and it's not even with match attributes, it's any bezel that if you decide, oops, I need to increase the stone size, press enter, then you don't have to go back to the drawing board and remake that bezel. Okay, that's a little bit about match attributes. So that was using match attributes with the same shape of stones. So you'll notice here, here's all the gemstones that are available in the gem library. So if we go to the, gem loader. We go to gem loader, if we click on gem shape, here is the entire library that we have. And I do have to tell you another story is this calf cut exists in Matrix because it was the very first stone that I built in Matrix. Yes. They asked me when we were working on Matrix to build stones. So Jeff, the owner of the company, made the first round stone, and I think he was bored right after that. And so I didn't build all of these, but the calf cut was my original one. Jeff said, do not make the baguette. That's too easy. I want you to pick something else. And I'm technically from Alberta, Canada, and calf cut. You know, Stampede, Calgary Stampede. Sorry. Sorry, I'm losing it here. But anyways, that's why the calf cut exists. It's not a popular stone shape at all, but I always think that even though I only worked on version 1 of Matrix, helping out the programmers, there's still a little of me living in the program. So there you go. Now you know the story of the calf cut. If you look at the different shapes and the way I have it lined up, so technically, if you make a round stone and there's going to be some ovals in that piece of jewelry as well, technically you don't have to rebuild the head for the oval. So let me just show you. So again, select the stone, tap F6, match attributes, select the gemstone, choose head, and create. So the geometry of the circle and the round are pretty close. Now, this worked great with a 4-claw. My theory may be wrong in certain cases, but for the most part, it's really great if you're doing a 3-stone and there's 2 ovals on either side of our round. You can use the match attributes. So again, with the princess cut, now if I was to delete these guys and selected all of these and tapped F6 and went to match attributes, let's go with the round and see what we get. See, it's chaos, okay? It's not happy because the geometry of a square is different than the round. We all know that. However, if I select these stones, tap F6, go back to match attributes, select the princess cut head, and create. There you go. Okay, so these guys are alone because they do not play well with others. Okay, the pear shapes, the trillium, the trillient, and then this sort of radiant cut trilliant. What did they call it over here? Trillion straight. Okay. That's what they're calling it. These guys play well together. The marquee does not. The heart shape does not play very well with these, even though technically it's sort of the same shape. But again, if I select it, tap F6, go to Match Attributes, select the pear shape, and go to Head, this is what happens. But technically you have a setting on there that has the same size as these. I chose these shapes so that they are relatively the same stone size. But if I select this, tap F6, go to Head Builder, here's the workaround. Choose the 4 claw and then go back to the 3 prong. So technically the only changes is that I would have to mess around. Is it level 2? Yeah, level 2. I could go in here and put a, oops, yeah, prong angle. Nope, not prong angle, sorry. That's just scoot. See, notice it's sliding it around, and I don't want that. I want it on either side. It's this guy here. There we go. Okay, and then I probably have to go to level 3. Oops. No, it wouldn't be even level 3. It would have to be level 4 and come in here. So even though I was showing you the different levels, that is only pertaining to the round gemstone. So as you change the shape and the different modes or prong layouts, it may not work the same way in the different levels as it does with the round. But again, did it save me any more time? I'm not sure by messing around with that. And the same thing with the calf cut. Well, here's the interesting thing with the calf cut. Let's just go to Match Attributes, the heart shape, and create. Again, total madness. But we'll go back to Head Builder and see if this is going to, there we go. Okay, now interesting about the half moon shape, we can't even do match attributes with this. If I select it and match attributes, and it doesn't matter what stone I pick, it is not even going to try. Okay, so this is the Lone Ranger. You just have to use Head Builder, and so you can't try to save a bit of time by applying a head of a different shaped stone to this so that you can save a little bit of time if you're adjusting the prongs and the rails and you don't want to spend that extra time. So that's match attributes. So hopefully this was not a waste of time, that I did show a couple little things that you didn't know about with Matrix. But again, they had to divide up Head Builder in 4 different levels so that we can get the setting looking the way you want it to be. So that is Head Builder and match attributes. We're going to end this video now. Again, I'm Shelley Latwin from GV Design Canada. I do teach online classes. Just reach out to me at any time. Be happy to answer any questions for you. And again, thanks for sitting in. I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you on the next video.